Eat, sleep, bet, repeat. That's how we get down on the opening line at EliteSportsBetting.com. I'll be your host, Benny Ricciardi, and we got a little bit of a special show today. Special because it's a screwed-up NBA slate, but we're going to talk about it anyway. And then also special because we're going to get into a little bit of the College Football National Championship game at the end, because I don't think we've actually had a show where we've talked about it on any of our, with the NFL going on and NBA and everything else. So we'll give you some thoughts here on it because I know these guys have I'm not going to say an out-of-the-box thought, but definitely one that I think is the lesser thought of what people are doing. And if you want to hear about it, well, you're just going to have to sit through a couple minutes of NBA talk before we get there. But like I said, not going to be a crazy long slate for NBA talk today because we have a ton of injury news going on right now. For any of you on the fantasy side of it, definitely make sure you tune into the live stream tonight. It'll be DC and I talking about that, going over what, how a lot of this injury stuff falls. The reason I mention this is because I noticed that nobody really has a lot of plays up here today for NBA, and I think rightly so because we're still waiting on a lot of these news. So, as always, I'll bring in my two experts. First one up top, my man, Real Frank Brank. What's going on this morning?
How's it going, Benny?
Not too bad. One of my kids was sick, so I'm a little under the weather, but I'm going to Las Vegas tomorrow, which always makes you feel better, and I don't really give a shit. So
whiskey will knock out that sickness for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I figured there'll be enough drinking going on that whatever's in my body is going to die tomorrow, good or bad. So. Yeah. And then also we got Golfman Paulie, Fried Egg Paulie over on Twitter for those of you out there. What's going on, Paulie?
What's up, Benny?
Yeah, not too much, man. I'm looking at this NBA slate here, and I got to be honest, I have a lot of question marks today. I don't know if you felt the same.
Yeah, there's question marks all over the place, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens when the news breaks and whether these players play or not, because it seems like a lot of them are just coin flips. So.
Yeah, so, we'll mention some of the leans we might have, whether some guys are in or out right now and, guys who we're waiting on. So at least you guys have an idea of, what the news and the important stuff that's going to be coming down later on today. So we'll start right at the top. We got the Philadelphia 76ers taking on the Indiana Pacers. This game opened with Philly as a 1.5 favorite. It has kind of switched over to the other side with Indiana now being a 2-point favorite at home. Total in this one around 213, 214. Opened at 214, seeing it kind of floating around in between those two numbers. We know Joel Embiid is out, so at least we have that information. That's something that's known already. The problem we have with this game is the unknowns on the Indiana side. Sabonis missed the game over the weekend, so a big game for Miles Turner without him in there. We also had Malcolm Brogdon miss another game over this weekend. Interesting what they did with the starters. I don't know if you guys saw that. Like Aaron Holiday coming off the bench right now. I think Doug McDermott was the one who started over the weekend. So they're kind of messing around with the way they're doing their rotations, which always makes it a little tough when you're trying to figure out things like minutes and, matchups and stuff like that. So, Frank, we'll start with you. Anything you're looking at in this Philly-Indiana game?
Not at the moment. Obviously, the injuries with Sabonis and Brogdon being questionable are huge for Indiana. Embiid is like a +5 player. He's like one of the best, analytically, one of the best players in the NBA. That being said, right now, if I mark both Sabonis and Brogdon out, then I have an edge on Philly. I have them favored by 1.5. The problem being that, even if one of those guys are in, my value at +2 on Philly right now is pretty muted out. If Sabonis was out, I would play the +2. He's worth about 2 or 2.5 points. Brogdon, for my model, is worth about 1 or 1.5. So if Brogdon were in and Sabonis were out, I would probably still play the +2 even with Embiid out. But I think we're going to be waiting for a while. Like I said, with both of them in, I would have the game around like Indiana -3. So it's really just like a wait and see game. And usually in these situations, you can't beat the line movement when we get the news anyway. But if you were somehow to see, a +2 out there and Sabonis is definitely out, then I think it's worth a play. Other than that, I'm certainly not going to play a total with where these guys are at right now. Brogdon's a pace guy. At the moment, I like the under, but like I said, that's with everybody out. So I really don't know where I stand on this until we get more news.
Paulie, how about you? Anything on this one?
Yeah, there's no play for me on this game here. No real edge either way based on where the market currently is with all the injury news.
Yeah, and Frank actually brought up a good point right there for anybody who's trying to say, oh, yeah, well, if we get the news, we can go run. A lot of times by the time you see that news, whether it be on Twitter or, whatever you're using to get your news about NBA injuries and stuff like that, by the time you see it, the guys in Vegas saw it already too, and they adjusted the line. So,
You normally have about 60 seconds from the time the news breaks before the line's locked. So if you can get in before 60 seconds, if you can react that quickly, good for you. If not, then line's locking, and it'll pop back up 10 minutes later with the adjusted line.
Yeah, and the problem with taking it before something like that is you're not taking an edge on the game. You're basically rolling the dice on some injury news, and that's not a way to make money long term, which is why today is such a tough slate to kind of navigate through. Good.
The game did open at +1, Indiana +1. So to see it at -2 now kind of suggests to me that Sabonis is going to play. At least they expect him to play. I don't take a lot of stock in that because we hear about this stuff later on. So not to harp on it too much, but yeah, it kind of looks to me like at least Brogdon's going to play, maybe both of them.
Yeah, and again, like I said, that's why today is a little bit of a shit show kind of slate because
Right.
We're really rolling the dice on injury news. We're not betting edges that we have, and in those situations, it's probably better to just wait for better games to kind of look at here. So let's talk about the next game. We got the New Orleans Pelicans against the Detroit Pistons in this one. Pelicans opened as a 1-point favorite. I'm seeing it as a pick 'em in some places right now. Big total in this game, opened at 226.5, seeing it around 226, 227. Couple pieces of injury news here. Derek Favors, Drew Holiday being the two big ones on the New Orleans side. The Pistons have some injuries too, but they're pretty much injuries that we've known about. Nothing new that really has popped up. But, Drew Holiday and Derek Favors, two key pieces for the New Orleans team, also makes this game a little bit tough to kind of figure. Paulie, anything you're looking at here?
This is another game with no edge for me. I will have some plays in some of the later games, though.
Yeah. Frank, anything you're looking at?
Nothing right now. Holiday, Reddick, Favors. We talked about before how important Favors has been to the Pelicans and their little bit of resurgence. But, yeah, nothing for me. I got all three of these guys out, and I've got Detroit -2. So it sounds like at least maybe 2 or 3 if I'm looking at this line correctly, right around pick'em. So it looks like maybe 2 or 3 of these guys aren't going to be in, or they're not going to be 100% or something. So, yeah, nothing for me here unless I get some more news.
Yeah, and that's the same way I'm kind of looking at it, even for fantasy, is, Lonzo Ball would be somebody that I'm going to be throwing out there if Drew Holiday can't play. And, Jackson Hayes is a guy who's going to be cheap and be in there. But, until we know if Favors and Holiday are playing, we can't really, make too many assumptions about this game either. This game is one that doesn't have a lot of injury news going on. Chicago Bulls against the Boston Celtics. The problem is this is a 10-point spread, even though it's one of the few games we have most of the news on already. Boston favored by 10 here, 215 on the total. Anything you guys are looking at here? We'll start with you, Frank.
No, it's unfortunately one of the few games that I don't have just marked off with an injury. I don't have an edge on here. I've got Boston favored by 10.5 and the line at 216. I have Thies marked out. He's definitely an under player, poor offense, good defensive guy, kind of analytically valuable to Boston. Some of the, plus minus stats really see him as a decent player that you wouldn't expect. So I would kind of lean to the under if he's in, but maybe, like I said, I got it at 216. So you're probably talking like 215, 214.5. I would have it if he's in. So nothing significant here. I'm probably not going to have a play on this all day, I would say.
Yeah, like I said, this is one of those kind of days where there's not a lot that's really standing out. But, Paulie, anything for you here?
Yeah, this is actually one of the games where I have a fair amount of action on. So the 2 plays I already made in this game were Bulls first half plus 5.5, and then also under in the first half 111. So if you look at these are 2 of the top 5 teams in terms of under rates hitting in the first half and the first quarter. So I haven't seen any first quarter lines posted yet for the under, so I haven't taken that yet, but most likely will as well. So they're hitting at about 65% on the unders in the first half and first quarter combined, which is a fairly large hit rate considering we're about halfway through the season. And we've kind of talked about it before with Chicago, especially in the first quarter, why they tend to have lower scoring games. And we've also seen that the Celtics have really, come out kind of sluggish, and especially in the first half of late, and, kind of really turned it on in the second half, where I have Chicago as the 12th best first half team, and I have Boston as the 10th. So the difference in the first half is very negligible. But when we go to the second half, I have Boston as the third best team and the Bulls as the 29th. So it's very possible it might be a Bulls first half that hope the game ends up around tied, and then take Boston in the second half, -5 or 6 or something like that.
All right, so we got some in-game stuff that we could be looking at here, as well as you said, once the first quarter pops, you'll probably have a bet on that.
Yeah.
Just as an idea, do you know around what numbers you're looking to see that at, where you'd be willing to take it?
Yeah, so the lines I got, so the first half bet was +5.5, which is out there in the market. First half under was 111. That's now down to 109.5, 110 in a few places already. I'd expect the quarter line to be 55.5, 55, somewhere around there. And I'm fine firing anything around that number should be good.
Okay. And are you taking Bulls first quarter too, or just?
I will not be taking the Bulls first quarter, no.
Okay, just the under though. The under.
Just the under for the first quarter bet.
All right, fair enough. So, again, we don't have a lot of stuff to do today, a lot of plays that are going to be fired in. So I wanted to kind of make sure we got anything where we do have an edge. Let's make sure we kind of talk about it here a little bit. So, the degenerates that listen to us can get some action and make some money today. And by that, I include myself in that as well.
As Benny is putting the bets in right now.
Yeah, I usually wait till after the show, but yeah, I already marked it down, so we're good to go. All right, so let's talk about the next game here. We got Oklahoma City against Minnesota. Oklahoma City, 2-point favorite in this one on the road. 217.5 total here. Looks like the total has actually drifted up a little bit already. I'm seeing 219 in a bunch of spots. One piece of news we're really waiting on here is Karl-Anthony Towns. That's the big thing. But obviously, being a high-usage, high-minutes guy, that's going to be a pretty significant guy to know whether or not he's going to be playing. So anything that you guys are looking at on OKC, Minnesota? Paulie, we'll start with you this time.
Nothing for me in that game, Benny.
Frank, anything for you?
No edge right now. I've got Minnesota +2 with Towns out. Just – like we talked about before, I got a guy out until I know he's in, especially a guy that's been in and out recently.
Yep.
Towns is like a +4 player, most of his value on offense. So I would expect this line to maybe be like Minnesota -2, -1.5, something like that if he does get announced in. And I've got the game at 218.5, so that total at 219. The movement looks about right even with Towns out. But if he ends up in, I think you could probably get away with Minnesota money line. At the current number, obviously, again, you have to try to beat the movement. But Minnesota, at any plus number on the money line or on the spread and or the over, I think would, be useful. I think the total would be in the 220s, low 220s if he does get announced in. But right now, the indications on the market look like he's out. Which I agree with the number where it sits right now.
Yeah, and this is one of those ones when you have a superstar who's been out for, I think he's been out for about 10 games or so, maybe more or less, somewhere around there. Usually whether or not he's going to play because they usually make a big deal to announce it as, hey, he's been practicing, he's good to go, he's going to give it a go Thursday or Wednesday or whatever. So I'm actually looking at this as probably another game that Minnesota's going to be playing without Karl-Anthony Towns, which – as the guy said, pretty much puts the line right around where it should be right now in the market. So that's kind of the way we're looking at it. If you want to roll the dice of whether or not Towns plays, not the way that I usually bet, but that would be the one thing you can do there. So the next game, we got Charlotte and Portland. Portland is a 8-point favorite here. Looks like it's even higher now. 8 points is what it opened at in a 218. I'm seeing it at 9.5 now. I don't know if you guys see that same thing.
Yeah, it just moved, yeah.
The total for this one is bouncing all around though. Like the Westgate has it at 217.5. MGM has it at 218. Will Hill has it at 219. Circa has it at 217. So there's a lot of difference in what everybody's offering. A little bit of juice on some of those to the over or under on, depending on what side, but a lot of difference in the numbers that people are offering for the total. So Frank, anything you're looking at here?
Yeah, it looks like someone's been kind of messing with that total. It looks like it got faked up and then bet back down this morning, which does happen. We've talked about that before. I've got the game at 10.5. Missed a boat on that 8. It was 8. It's gone to 9.5. So I agree with that movement, but not enough for me to play it at the moment. We've been playing these Charlotte unders the last 4 we've played, and they're 1-3. The first game went to overtime when it was well under. The next game had a 75-point fourth quarter that sent it just hardly over, a couple points over. The third game was an off-ball tech that resulted in 1 free throw on the last possession in a 1-point game that should have never had a chance to go to overtime because Charlotte was going to take the last shot or not take the last shot, or make the last shot or not make the last shot, and the game would have ended at a 1-point game either way. And it ends up going to overtime and going over. And then the last game that we played went under easy. So we played the last 4 Charlotte unders. They all should have been under easy, just a lot of bad luck there along the way. I do lean to the under. I definitely would play it at 219, but I keep seeing this number go from 217 to 219 to 217 to 219. So if it ends up settling up, I'm going to play opposite, but I got it like 215.5, so I'm not going to play it at 217. I would play it around 218 or 218.5. It's really hard. I'm kind of waiting for the market to settle here to see if I can get a number. It looks like it did open at 218 and has moved down. So if I can get it back at 218, I would take it, but I don't know if I'm going to see that. We have, like I said, we played the last 4 Charlotte unders. They've been playing extremely slow as of late, and they've kept that up. They're not very efficient team, especially offensively. I think the market's starting to figure that out a little bit, and they're seeing the recent trend of like these games are going over, but they shouldn't be going over. And now, in all of those games, we've had good line movement down. So I would expect to continue to see that here. So I would be surprised if it goes back up, but if you can snipe off at 218 or 218.5 somewhere, I would play the under. I just don't have it available right now.
Paulie, anything you're looking at?
Yeah, so I was actually surprised at the line moving from 8 to beyond, because I actually have this game lined at plus 5.5 for Charlotte. So I'm a big buyer on Charlotte here, especially at 9.5. I just don't trust this Portland Blazers team. They've, let everybody down the entire year. Sure, they look great on paper with Lillard, McCollum, Carmelo Anthony, right? But they just can't put it together. And, we've had in the past years, Portland plays great at home. Well, that hasn't necessarily been the case this year. And Charlotte has covered a lot of spreads, especially when you start getting these higher numbers to where even if they're down 15 going in the fourth quarter, it's entirely possible to cover 9.5 via a back door or something like that. So once you start getting these spreads very high, these are the ones where you'll see, Charlotte, play very good in the fourth quarter. And, they haven't gotten blown out a lot lately. I mean, obviously they know they just played last night in Phoenix, but this is a little bit of a market overreaction here, I think.
Okay, so a little bit of interest in Charlotte, maybe a little bit of interest in the under, depending on what numbers you can get. So both the guys have a little bit of a play here. And this is actually one of the other games where I don't have much in terms of injury news. So we know a lot of the stuff here, and, we can be a little bit more confident about making some bets and not worrying about how things are going to fall. So let's see, the next game we have to talk about, we got the Orlando Magic against the Sacramento Kings. A lot of injury news in this game. Sacramento opened as a 2.5-point favorite. They're still favored by about 2. Lowish kind of total, 210, 210.5, which makes sense. You got 2 teams that aren't, the fastest paced teams in the league, and they're both defensively pretty good. They're both not giving up a ton of points, so I understand with the unders there. We're looking at guys like Aaron Gordon, who was questionable today. We're looking at – we don't really know who's going to play of the big guys on the Kings. I mean, we know Rashawn Holmes is out. We're not sure if Marvin Bagley's going to be in here or not right now. They have a couple other guys listed as questionable in this game. I think Harrison Barnes, but it looks like he's going to play. Again, a lot of injury news, a lot of stuff that's kind of up in the air here. Paulie, we'll start with you on this one. Anything you're looking at here for this Orlando-Sacramento game?
Yeah, I have 2 plays in the game here. Both got on the same side here, and that's going to be the under for the first half and for the first quarter. So we're talking about, the total being at, 210.5, right? Well, the first half under right now is at 108, which seems a bit high to me. And the first quarter sit at 54. And so if we're talking about kind of like how we had the Bulls in Boston, these are 2 of the other teams that are very high hit rates on first quarter and first half under, both about 65% combined for the year for first quarter and first half unders. And this is one where I would have expected the market or the books try to shade this line a bit, and it seems like it's almost sitting on the opposite side, right? I was expecting when I saw the total come out at 210, I'm thinking, they're going to list the first half at like 104 or something like that. And instead, we're getting 108. So I had this number closer to like 103 for the first half, and we're getting 108. So it's got kind of, forced to play it there. Same thing for the first quarter. We're getting 54. The number should be like 51 and a half, 52. So it'll be another play for me there as well.
Yeah, that's a pretty decent sizable edge from your number and the number that they're offering. So that's interesting. Frank, anything you're looking at here?
No, with all the injuries, just purely guessing who's in and out. I've got it at 1.5 and to a 9.5. So even if I wanted to play something, I'm not going to. And that pace is going to change based on who's in and out. And this game's a mess to begin with. So yeah, I'm me. I'm not getting involved here.
Yep. No, fair enough. I mean, like I said, there is a couple guys on both sides of this game. It looks like a lot of them are more likely than not to play, with the exception of maybe Aaron Gordon, who I think is actually more likely to sit than play. But really, it's all guesses right now until we get some more information on it. So Paulie's got a couple little plays there. Frank's staying away. Last game on the slate, not really one that is normally something I like to get involved in. Cleveland Cavaliers against the LA Lakers. 220 was the total that it opened up at. 13.5 Laker favorite. Lakers are -14, -13.5, so it's actually even drifting up a little bit. The total is actually drifted down, 220 to 219.5. Nothing big, nothing major, but that's the direction things are going. We know LeBron James is going to be back after missing the game over the weekend. We don't know what's going to happen with Anthony Davis. So that's really the news that we're sitting here waiting on. On the Cleveland side, as far as I can see, all the major pieces are in, so nothing too crazy there. But again, this is a game with a 13, 14-point total, 220 over under. Just not really one that is normally something I get involved in. So, Frank, we'll start with you. Anything here you're getting involved in? Or?
Yeah, I avoid these big spreads anyway because the nonsense at the end, you end up 25 points and, lose the fourth quarter by 15 or something, and then you don't cover. So I tend to avoid these anyway. I have LeBron in. He's probable and Davis out. Rondo's questionable as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
I have Rondo in, and I've got the line at 15. So I agree with that movement a little bit. But any mixer of these guys is going to have an effect. Rondo's a plus player. AD is obviously a very plus player. If he's in, I mean, you're going to be looking at a spread that's almost 20 points probably. So not for me. I've got it at 221, but like I said, that's very much subject to change based on who's playing and who's not. And who knows, man? Like you end up with LeBron out or something again out of nowhere. It's going to be, I know he's probable, but you never know. Especially a game like Cleveland. Like I know his thing is like if he's good, he wants to play because he doesn't know if kids are going to be able to watch him for how long, and that's commendable. It's good, but if I'm LeBron. Or if I'm the Lakers camp, I'm like, you better be damn sure you're 100% or close because they've got one of the best teams in the NBA, and it purely depends on him.
Yeah, bigger fish to fry for them this year.
Yeah, as a 15-point favorite, I mean, they're going to be a 10-point favorite without both of them. So
yeah, I mean, they won over the weekend without them. You know what I mean? So they got enough other guys going on that can do something. Paulie, anything for you on this one?
Yeah, I'll actually have two more plays in this game waiting for the lines to post. That'll be Lakers first quarter, Lakers first half. So if you're looking at the metrics in terms of how these teams have performed against the spread in those time frames, Cleveland is bottom 5 ATS in the first quarter and first half. Lakers are top 5 ATS in first quarter and first half, which really isn't surprising because we're seeing all these big spreads. And usually they'll play really good in the first half and then kind of shit the bed in the second half. So I'll be playing both those. I kind of expect the numbers to be around probably -4, -4.5 in first quarter, and -8, -8.5 for the half. And I'll definitely be playing both those. And I would lock those in the minute you see them posted, even before any injury news breaks, because even if LeBron gets ruled out, those numbers are not that far off. But if for some reason AD gets in, those numbers are moving probably closer to 6 and 10.5, somewhere around there. 11.
Even Rondo, I mean, even if Rondo gets announced in, you're going to see that go up, right?
Exactly. So this is one based on where the market currently is. If we're seeing first half, first quarter lines at any of your books, I would definitely be locking them in now.
All right, so there you go. If you see numbers up there already, make sure you take them if they're in that range, the 4.5.
Is Danny Green also kind of on the edge of playing here? I thought I saw that somewhere where he
probable, I believe. I haven't marked.
Yeah, so like any mixture of those three guys, Green's a +2, +2.5 guy, Rondo's +2, +2.5 guy, and AD's like a +5 guy. So you're saying, if God forbid all three of them get announced in, that line's going to go up to 20 or like what you're saying, like 10 or something in the first half.
Yeah, I would be surprised if anyone else besides AD sits tonight of those four guys. I think the other three probably play. The only one that might sit is Rondo, but LeBron and Danny Green are pretty much locked in my opinion.
Yeah, and Avery Bradley's back as well, who's been a guy that's been in and out too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things getting added in there. So there you go. So that wraps it up for the NBA today. One thing I wanted to talk about, because it is today and it is a big day here tonight, we got the national championship game going on tonight for college football. Let me switch over here so I can get the updated lines. I've been seeing it floating around like 5.5. Is that what you guys are seeing too? Or
looks like it got hit this morning to 5.
Yeah, actually, you know what? It is that. Most of these places I'm seeing now have it down to 5 at typical juice with a total of 67.5 to 68.5 is where I'm seeing it, depending on what book you're looking at. It opened at LSU -6 and 70 points, so the totals come down a little bit, and it's slight movement in the direction of Clemson. Although honestly, from 6 to 5.5 is not the biggest key number overall. But I found it interesting because I feel like a lot of people are just hammering money onto LSU right now, and both of you guys have a little bit of a lean to Clemson, right?
Yeah, so Clemson's tough for me, given their schedule. I mean, I do account for it and everything, but you never really can be that confident, right? Like, you never really know how good a team is. We know how good LSU is. But if we look at Clemson, they played inferior competition, especially in the second half. But Lawrence has really come around in the second half of the season from struggling at the beginning of the year, and they were winning by 50 points. It's really hard for me as just a strictly numbers guy to account for situations like that, even though I do it statistically in my model. It's really hard for me to say, I think this team is worth that much. It's hard to ration. But I took Clemson at +6. I honestly would probably still play them at 5. I was pretty confident we were going to see like a 3.5 here. I don't think we would ever see -3 because of the key number. Even at high or big, I would be very surprised at that. I had the game at 66 too on the total, so I do agree with that under movement. I think these games are typically going to be played a little closer to the vest. We saw Clemson kind of play a little bit more reserved against Ohio State, and I think you'll see the same thing here. Unless they get behind big early or something, which I would be surprised with that secondary that they really would give up a ton of points. So I would say that I played the +6 as opposed to the under because I don't want to play both sides. But I would still play 5.5, and I think I still would play 5. Once you get into 4.5, then you're talking about I'm on the edge there because, like I said, I thought this game was going to settle around 3.5. It still might, but I was surprised to see early money come in on LSU. And I wouldn't be surprised to see late money come in on Clemson, personally.
You think a lot of that early money, Paulie, was coming from like the public, or you think it was coming from the sharps?
No, so like in terms of the movement here, I think you can actually wait and see if it's going to hit 6 or higher because I'm expecting you're going to have the public all over them late, and so this number is not going to go any lower because they just know 9 out of 10 people are going to be betting LSU tonight in the game, so I wouldn't be surprised if it sees 6 or maybe even 6.5 later today. I got this game lined at LSU -3, so I took Clemson +6.5 a couple weeks ago. Do you guys have any idea? I know it is. What the look-ahead line of this game was before LSU played Oklahoma?
No, but I would have said small favorites, right? That's what I would have predicted.
Yeah, I was going to say
my number changed like 2 points or so from.
Yes, it was Clemson -1, -105 favored over LSU. So if we're looking at that, we're thinking how much of a change of LSU playing against Oklahoma and Clemson playing Ohio State affected the line. In reality, there's a couple point shift, right? 2-3 point shift, right? So I moved mine to where I thought the line should have been like LSU -3. And that's about a fair movement. And this is just a massive overreaction. And they just realized that once this public saw LSU beat down Oklahoma, the books were not going to hold or hang a low number because they knew they were getting LSU action either way. So why would they post a 3 or a 4 when they know they can post a 6 or a 5.5 and they're still going to get so much action? You're getting 80-90% of the bets and money on LSU, and you're going to have some sharp buyback on 5.5, 6, 6.5.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see if folks, like you're saying, are waiting to see how late they can get a 6 or if they expect it to go up. Because typically the way this works is, the dummies are betting, the squares and the dummies are betting, this game at 5 p.m. today, right? So
you'll see a lot of LSU money flow in the last 2 or 3 hours. And then I wouldn't be surprised if, 15 minutes, half an hour before kick, the line hits like 6.5 and then just plummets down to 5 as the structures probably just hammer the number above 6.5. They're playing it back because this opened up a little bit lower. If they're trying to, lay off some of the liability, or even get a potential middle in there on some of their.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, this LSU team's the best team in the country, in my opinion. I have Clemson actually rated around 3, but to say like the best team in the country and the third best team in the country, there's a 6-point difference on a neutral field. That seems so crazy to me. I could even argue that Clemson's the second best team here. It's just and I hate to say this without going back and looking, because we've seen some crazy Alabama seasons, but this is as good of a season that I've seen just from the top of my head that LSU has put together. I mean, they played so many good teams, and they arguably had a top 2 or 3 schedule, like strength of schedule wise, and they killed everybody. Like they really just beat the hell out of everybody. And I know Alabama came back late, but they were out of that game for the most part. They needed some heroics at the end to even make that close. They almost got it, but this is as good of a season as that you're going to see. That being said, I don't know if there's ever been a team that is like far and away 6 points better than the next team. These are still college kids, right? Like I find it hard to believe that, that they're 6 points or even 5 points better than Clemson here.
Yeah, there's a couple things here. Is that it's not really a neutral field because they're playing in New Orleans, right? So like there's a little bit of home field edge. So that was about a 1.5 point home field edge for me, just because based on the location there. And then the other thing to consider is like, if we're comparing this line to what the Oklahoma LSU line, isn't it kind of laughable saying that this line is only like 7 or 8 points different than the LSU Oklahoma line was? Mm-hmm. Right.
I remember before we talked about that game, before we talked about those 2 games, I mean, way back, like around like New Year's, you both were telling me like, if the game winds up with either Ohio State or Clemson facing LSU, that you had it as around the pick'em, or maybe even LSU with the underdog here. So, the fact that now we're getting 4 or 5 points or even 6 points in some cases on, the team that you both thought actually had the better chance to be favored before those 2 games were played. I mean, listen, they only played 1 game and it's only been 2 weeks. And all of a sudden we have 6-7 points of line movement. To me, that means that the side I want to be on is probably Clemson getting the
I really expect LSU to be like a 3-point favorite, maybe 3.5. And then, just from last week, I mean, Clemson beat a really good Ohio State team who also had a crazy good season, right? Like they also beat a real team, and LSU beat a okay Oklahoma team, but they were also like they lost like 5 starters. It's like so I expected LSU to. They were 14-point favorites or 15-point favorites in that game, and I have Clemson Oklahoma line right now at 11.
Exactly. So that's the adjustment I just mentioned. Yeah, exactly. The line doesn't make sense when you're comparing it, right? It's 4 points off.
Yeah, 3-4 points. Like I don't really see how LSU is double a favorite of what you would expect given just the lines from last week.
Yeah.
Like you could argue that LSU maybe should have been a higher favorite last week, which I could kind of see. But even if you had them at like 16 or 17 points, I don't think anyone was going to rush to bet -14, -15 because of the key numbers, right? So I don't know. It's hard for me, like I said, to see any team in recent memory that is 6 points better than the next best team. I just don't see it.
Paulie, we didn't get I didn't ask you this, but Frank talked about the total a little bit. How do you feel about the total here coming down from 70 to 68? I think Frank said he had it around 66 or so. So
I'm kind of right on mark with the totals there. No real edge for me. That's one you can watch and play live. You'll find out after about 2 possessions each way. So, towards the end of the first quarter, you should have a pretty good idea whether this game is going to be going over or under based upon pace, matchups, play calling, and et cetera.
Yeah, I'm interested in the play calling because LSU came out firing against Oklahoma, and rightfully so. But Clemson was pretty held back, kind of like NFL-style defense, NFL-style offense to start against Ohio State, and it really hurt them. So I'm curious to see if they try to keep up with LSU. But my inclination is they know they're the worst team. We're the underdogs here. Dabo plays that up. It's annoying. Right? He plays that up every year. But they know that from a coaching perspective, that less plays in this game gives them a better chance to win.
100%.
Right? When you're the worst team, it's always that way, right? Like the less possessions, the better chance you have to cover, the better chance you have to win.
And
if you slow it down, I think that really helps them. And I think they're going to try.
I think they're going to go slow as well with a lot of runs or a lot of short passes. Keep the clock going. Just trying to keep Burrow off the field, right? I mean, we've seen this strategy, across the NFL, across college football, to where if you're playing against a superstar and a really top team, small number of possessions allows for a higher variance in result there, right?
Yeah, don't let Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers have the ball, and you can win the game.
Yeah, slow it down, run the football, keep them off the field, keep your defense fresh. You got
to convert. You have to convert, right?
Eliminate the chance of turnovers as well. So
if you keep going run, and it's 3rd and 8, you're going to have a really hard time winning that game. That's the other side. So, but Clemson showed the ability to come back last week against an Ohio State team that was, a top, at least by everyone's metric, a top 3 team in the country. They made huge adjustments in the second half and shut down Ohio State in the second half. So.
Yeah, but we also realize this is not like the LSU defense of the past couple of years. This defense is actually vulnerable. So, you can see, it wouldn't be surprised if they told me that Clemson ran for 300 yards in this game. That would not surprise me at all.
Yeah. And lost.
Exactly. That's very possible. But,
yeah.
All right, so there you go. I wanted to get a little bit of national championship game talk out there for everybody, and we got a little bit of national championship game talk out there, so everybody kind of knows where our guys are sitting here. Both of them kind of looking at Clemson. Hopefully we can get that number at the 6, and we can be some of those sharps that are at the 6 and 6.5 that are banging it on the way back down after all the chumps take it at 5.5 and bid it up for us a little bit earlier in the day. So don't be that chump. Wait a little bit later on in the day. Hopefully we can get the 6, 6.5, and hopefully we can end up cashing it. Anything else you guys want to add here before we start, or, basically just everybody sit by your computer and wait for NBA injury news now?
Yeah, just wait it out. It sucks, but it's just one of those days.
Yep. All right. So for Frank and for Paulie, I'm Benny, and this has been another episode of The Opening Line.